America's most powerful warship is no longer safe. And if that sentence sounds dramatic, it shouldn't, because this is not about panic, it's about math. Right now, the United States Navy operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. A single Ford-class carrier costs over $13 billion just to build. Add the air wing, add the destroyers, add the cruisers, add the submarines, add decades of maintenance, and one carrier strike group represents over $30 billion of concentrated power floating in open water. The United States spends more than $800 billion a year on defense. Global military spending has crossed $2 trillion annually. Meanwhile, U.S. federal debt has surpassed $34 trillion. Interest payments alone are rapidly approaching the size of the entire defense budget. That's not background noise, that's a signal. Because when you zoom out, something bigger comes into focus. The vulnerability of America's most powerful warship is not about one missile test. It's not about one rival navy. It's not even about one technological leap. It's about a repeating pattern. A pattern that has governed every dominant military power in modern history. And every time this pattern completes, the most powerful symbol of that empire becomes vulnerable. Not gradually, not emotionally, systematically. Here's how it works. First comes asymmetric innovation, a breakthrough so decisive it reshapes the battlefield. It creates overwhelming superiority. It secures trade routes. It deters rivals. It generates wealth. Confidence surges. The dominant power feels untouchable. Then comes expansion. The innovation scales. Fleets grow. Bases multiply. Commitments stretch across oceans. Defense budgets expand. What was once flexible becomes institutionalized. What was once efficient becomes expensive. The system grows heavier. Then comes counter-adaptation. Rivals don't copy the system. They study it. They look for pressure points. They develop cheaper ways to neutralize expensive platforms. The cost curve flips. It becomes cheaper to destroy than to defend. And finally, the inevitable outcome. The once invulnerable symbol of dominance becomes a liability, not because it is weak in isolation, but because the system around it has changed. Economics shift, technology diffuses, adversaries adapt. The cost of maintaining supremacy exceeds its strategic return. This is not theory, it is history. Let's test it. In 1906, Britain launched HMS Dreadnought. It was revolutionary. Uniform big guns, steam turbine propulsion. It instantly rendered every other battleship obsolete. Britain already ruled the seas, but Dreadnought cemented total naval supremacy. The Royal Navy protected trade routes spanning the globe. London dominated global finance. The pound sterling functioned as the world's reserve currency. Stage 1, check. Then came expansion. The Dreadnought triggered an arms race with Germany. Battleships multiplied. Costs exploded. By 1914, Britain had nearly 30 Dreadnought-type ships. The empire stretched from India to Africa to the Pacific. Naval supremacy required constant shipbuilding and massive financial commitment. Stage 2, verified. Then came counter-adaptation. Germany didn't need more dreadnoughts than Britain. It deployed submarines, U-boats, far cheaper, highly disruptive. They targeted merchant shipping, nearly starved Britain into submission during World War I. Suddenly, billion-pound fleets were vulnerable to relatively inexpensive underwater predators. Stage 3, undeniable. Then came the outcome. In 1941, Japanese aircraft sank HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse. Capital ships destroyed by planes, no battleship duel, no dramatic broadside exchange. Air power had replaced big gun supremacy. The symbol of maritime dominance became exposed. Stage 4. The system had shifted. Now consider Imperial Japan. After the Meiji Restoration, Japan industrialized at astonishing speed. It built a modern navy inspired by Britain. In 1905, at the Battle of Tsushima, Japan annihilated Russia's Baltic fleet. It was a defining moment, proof of technological mastery. Stage 1. Check. Then expansion. Japan built the Yamato-class battleships, the largest ever constructed, over 70,000 tons, massive 18-inch guns, engineering marvels, symbols of national pride. Stage 2, verified. But while Japan invested in gigantic battleships, the United States refined carrier aviation. Aircraft extended strike range beyond the horizon. Battleship armor became irrelevant against bombs dropped from above. Stage 3, undeniable. In 1945, Yamato sailed on a one-way mission. It was sunk by American aircraft before it could even reach its objective. The largest battleship ever built destroyed from the sky. Stage 4. Again, the symbol of dominance became a target. Now consider the Soviet Union. After World War II, the USSR achieved nuclear parity with the United States. It couldn't match the U.S. Navy ship for ship, so it developed submarines and anti-ship missiles. Strategic deterrence became its asymmetric advantage. Stage 1. Check. Then expansion. The Soviet military-industrial complex consumed enormous resources. By the 1980s, defense spending reached an estimated 15 to 17% of GDP. Global commitments stretched across Eastern Europe, Afghanistan, and beyond. Stage 2, verified. Then counter-adaptation. The United States invested in precision-guided munitions, stealth, and carrier-based air dominance. Meanwhile, oil prices collapsed. The Soviet economy stagnated. Maintaining military parity became financially unsustainable. Stage 3, undeniable. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, not because a carrier was sunk, not because Moscow was invaded, but because the economic weight of sustaining its military machine exceeded systemic capacity. Stage 4, the platform survived. The system failed. Now look at the present. After World War II, the United States built the aircraft carrier into the core of global power projection. Nuclear propulsion extended endurance. Integrated strike groups combined air power, submarines, and layered defenses. No nation could match its reach. The U.S. secured sea lanes, protected trade, built alliances. The dollar became the world's reserve currency. Military dominance reinforced financial dominance. Stage 1, check. Then expansion. 11 supercarriers. Permanent forward deployments. Global commitments across Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific. Defense spending over $800 billion annually. Federal debt exceeding $34 trillion. Interest payments rising sharply. Each new carrier more advanced, more complex, more expensive. Ford-class carriers incorporating electromagnetic catapults and advanced radar systems, but plagued by cost overruns and delays. Stage 2, verified. Then counter-adaptation. China did not try to build 11 carriers overnight. Instead, it built anti-access systems. The DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles, hypersonic glide vehicles, long-range precision strike systems, satellite tracking networks, cyber capabilities, swarm drones, a missile costing a few $1 million designed to threaten a $13 billion platform. The cost asymmetry is stark. Add autonomous underwater vehicles, add commercial satellite surveillance, add artificial intelligence-enhanced targeting. The ocean is no longer a hiding place. Movements can be tracked, choke points monitored. Stage 3, undeniable. Now consider the operational implications. In a high-end conflict scenario in the Western Pacific, carriers must operate farther from shore to avoid missile range. That distance reduces sortie rates. It limits sustained air operations. It shifts the carrier from aggressive spearhead to cautious asset. When your most powerful warship must remain outside effective range to survive, the equation has changed. Stage 4 is not theoretical. It is forming. Now pause for a moment. This is not a prediction that carriers will disappear tomorrow. It is a recognition that dominance is peaking. And peaks are followed by transitions. The deeper issue is economics. When the cost to destroy becomes lower than the cost to defend, strategic calculus changes. When interest payments compete with defense budgets, fiscal flexibility narrows. When advanced technologies diffuse globally, monopoly advantages shrink. And when institutions are built around massive platforms, shipyards, contractors, congressional districts, career structures, inertia sets in. Systems resist adaptation. Even when the math demands it, some argue that new technologies will restore dominance. Directed energy weapons, AI-driven defenses, advanced missile interceptors, maybe. But every empire believed innovation would perpetually renew its edge. Britain built bigger guns, Japan built bigger battleships, the Soviet Union built more missiles. Innovation did not stop the pattern, because the pattern is systemic. Hypersonic weapons reduce response time to minutes. Drone swarms overwhelm defensive systems through saturation. Cyber warfare targets logistics and communications. Space assets become contested, threatening navigation and targeting systems. Carrier strike groups depend on networks. Disrupt the network and the platform weakens. War games, conducted by multiple defense institutions, have repeatedly shown high attrition rates for surface vessels in near-peer conflict scenarios. This isn't cinematic speculation, it's structural analysis. And here's the psychological dimension most people ignore. Power is perception. For decades, the aircraft carrier represented untouchable dominance, a floating airbase that could park offshore and reshape regional politics. But once credible vulnerability enters the equation, perception shifts. Allies reconsider risk exposure. Adversaries test boundaries. Markets adjust expectations. Insurance premiums rise. Defense doctrines evolve. The British Empire didn't collapse the day Prince of Wales sank. But the illusion of invulnerability fractured. The same dynamic is unfolding now. If America's most powerful warship can be tracked, targeted, and threatened at scale, uncontested maritime supremacy becomes contested maritime presence. Not overnight, not dramatically, but gradually, systematically. This time is different, many will say, because America is larger, because alliances are stronger, because technology is superior, because the economy is innovative. But history punishes that phrase. Every dominant power believes it has escaped structural law. Yet the sequence repeats. Innovation creates dominance. Dominance fuels expansion. Expansion breeds overextension. Overextension invites countermeasures. Countermeasures expose vulnerability. Vulnerability triggers systemic shift. It is cyclical. It is mathematical. It is indifferent to optimism. Now here's why this matters beyond military analysis. Naval dominance underwrites global trade. Roughly 90% of world trade moves by sea. Energy flows depend on secure shipping lanes. Financial markets assume stability of maritime routes. If the Western Pacific becomes more contested, supply chains shift, manufacturing recalibrates, insurance costs rise, energy markets fluctuate. Inflationary pressures ripple outward. Defense stocks may surge. Safe haven assets may react. Currencies adjust to geopolitical risk. This is not abstract. It is interconnected. When symbols of power become vulnerable, capital reallocates. So what should you do with this information? First, reject complacency. Second, study systemic patterns rather than headlines. Third, watch the indicators. Watch defense spending relative to debt servicing. Watch missile proliferation trends. Watch satellite warfare developments. Watch alliance cohesion in the Indo-Pacific. Watch industrial capacity, shipbuilding timelines, maintenance backlogs, logistics resilience. These are stage 4 signals. The pattern does not announce itself with a single catastrophic event. It unfolds gradually, then suddenly. And by the time consensus recognizes it, repositioning becomes reactive instead of strategic. America's most powerful warship is not unsafe because of weak sailors, not because of flawed engineering, not because of incompetence. It is vulnerable because the environment around it is changing faster than the system built to support it. And systems rarely pivot quickly. They carry inertia. They defend legacy investments. They rationalize risk until the math overwhelms the narrative. The question is not whether carriers will vanish. The question is whether their era of uncontested dominance is ending. And if it is, what replaces it? Distributed lethality, unmanned fleets, submarine-heavy doctrines, space-based deterrence? Every transition reshapes alliances, budgets, and global influence, and transitions are volatile. We are not witnessing the destruction of a ship. We are witnessing the stress testing of an architecture. Military power, financial dominance, industrial capacity, technological edge, political will, all interconnected. When architecture exceeds structural limits, it doesn't always collapse dramatically. Sometimes it simply shifts, gradually, irreversibly. The most dangerous assumption in geopolitics is permanence. History offers no permanent advantages, only temporary leads. America's most powerful warship is no longer untouchable. And when untouchable symbols become targetable assets, history accelerates. If you want to understand where this pattern goes next, how financial systems, energy routes, and technological competition converge in the next phase, then stay engaged. Because the next stage is not about a single missile, it's about systemic recalibration. And those who recognize recalibration early position themselves differently than those who deny it. The pattern is visible, the math is public, the signals are flashing. The question is not whether change is coming. The question is whether you'll see it before it becomes undeniable. Follow this channel, subscribe. Because in the next analysis, we'll break down what replaces dominant platforms when they peak, and how power reorganizes when the architecture shifts. History doesn't repeat perfectly, but its patterns rhyme with precision. And right now, the rhyme is getting louder.